The first thing we always did is to make sure everybody was aligned to the story and accepted that they had a role in this customer management. We called it sales, that you had to like sales, you had to be involved in it. I know other people like to soften that and call it a customer focus, but whatever you call it, a business is about getting and keeping customers at a profit. And if everybody doesn't buy into that, that's where you have problems. So my job throughout whichever role I played was to detect if there was a big horse that was going to pull my wagon in the wrong direction, and either turn that horse around so it was going in the same direction we were, or ask them to leave. Because the thing that stalls most businesses is that people don't know where they're going. It didn't really matter whether I was a sales manager or a regional manager or the president of a company. These same principles apply in every role that I played.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the CEO Podcast, How to Design and Build a Legendary Company. I'm your host, Mario, together with my lovely co-host, Professor Robert Hargrove. Hey Robert.
Hello,
how are you doing?
And good to be here. We're here today with Tom Kaiser, a person that I described as someone as a triple threat in a benign way. He's been the CEO president of a company. He's been an entrepreneur and co-founder of $1 billion startup. And he's been a very super successful investor. So I think he has a lot to share about all of these things that would be of value to our viewers. So I thought maybe a good question to begin with is for Tom. Tell us a little bit about your career journey from where you started out to where you are now.
Well, I started out of the university as a KC-135 navigator in the U.S. Air Force. And I did that for 5 years. And when I was coming out of the Air Force, the one thing that struck me is that I better find some place where I'm going to be judged completely on merit and nothing else. And I decided that I was going to be a salesman. And then I said, I'm going to sell something that costs a lot of money because that's where the commissions are and that's how you get paid. So I found a company called Arkwright Mutual Insurance Company. They interviewed me and I talked to their head guy who was an ex-B-29 pilot. And I talked to their number 2 guy who was an F-104 pilot. We talked airplanes and they hired me. And I started my sales career and it took off like a rocket. And I say the common denominator through my career has been always a focus on the customer with a mantra that we in this business, or whatever business you're in, are here to get and keep customers at a profit. And I found that if I said that mantra to myself every day and I got everybody aligned behind me in that same mission, we could do all kinds of things. And that's really been the driver of my success. Sales, customer focus, and a pledge to get and keep customers at a profit for whatever company I work for. And through the process, I went from salesperson to sales manager to regional manager to executive vice president to president of several companies, and finally to a startup where me and a bunch of other guys started a company that now is, Robert said, $1 billion company. It's almost a $15 billion company today. But of course, I'm not associated with them now. But after my 8 years with them, they've gone on and become one of the major insurance companies in the world.
Oh, phenomenal.
What else would you say was the secret of your success in addition to the things you've mentioned?
I think thinking out of the box, looking for solutions. When you're in a sales role, you're out there trying to solve a problem that you can define that a customer has. And you're spending a lot of time to find out what problems they might have and how you can build a solution. So it takes a lot of creativity, a lot of work with other people to come up with the right solution that's going to meet the needs of that customer on any given time.
Is this something that you instilled in your team?
Oh, something always instilled in all of our teams. The first thing we always did is to make sure everybody was aligned to the story and accepted that they had a role in this customer management. We called it sales, that you had to like sales, you had to be involved in it. I know other people like to soften that and call it a customer focus, But whatever you call it, a business is about getting and keeping customers at a profit. And if everybody doesn't buy into that, that's where you have problems. So my job throughout whichever role I played was to detect if there was a big horse that was going to pull my wagon in the wrong direction and either turn that horse around so it was going in the same direction we were or ask them to leave. Because the thing that stalls most businesses is that people don't know where they're going. And when they don't know where they're going, they go anywhere and it doesn't work. I mean, there's an old expression, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. It didn't really matter whether I was a sales manager or a regional manager or the president of a company. These same principles applied in every role that I played.
Excellent.
Tom, can I interject super quickly? So if you reflect back on your time as a CEO of you say that they are a $15 billion startup now, a $15 billion company. Since we are talking to CEOs, what would you say was your favorite thing to do as a CEO? And what was your least favorite thing to do?
Well, that's an easy one for me. The favorite thing for me was to interact with customers and to understand how what we were trying to build is going to help these people achieve what they wanted to achieve. Because I knew that if we brought something to the table that helped them, it was going to help us. And the least favorite, I don't like meetings. I don't like sitting around watching people twiddle their thumbs. And one of the big headaches of business is there's a lot of people who have an issue with contributing. And one of the ways that they deal with that is they go to meetings and they eat up other people's time and they don't accomplish a lot. So I never liked that. And I tried to keep that to a minimum. I like one-on-one with the people that I work with. I like to coach and to help individuals win as much as they possibly could win. And I tried to stay away from a lot of just talking around the table and getting no direction.
Okay. CEOs today, we all read the same headlines, but one of the things I've noticed in the last week or so is that one day you read an article in the newspaper. I read one about Jamie Dimon who said the economy was going to be in for a hard landing. The next day, the same guy said, we're in a bull market. CEOs respond to this kind of economic news. What's your interpretation of the business environment that all CEOs are operating in today and how they're responding to it?
Well, I think Dimon has said that we're headed for stagflation. And that's a pretty scary thing because that's when the economy just doesn't move. It sort of stays in a neutral pattern and no one wins. And I think he's probably right. I don't think a big recession is necessarily on the cards in the near future, but I'm afraid the stagflation is. And one of the things that happens in those type of environments is your expenses almost automatically exceed your expectations. And the inflation drives up the cost of everything. You can't grow because of the stag part of the stagflation. And you get a lot of pressure on the business because you're not making your margins. And you're not turning the profit that the investment world expects that you're going to do. So companies are faced with a big choice. And many of them pick the choice. They're going to downsize. They're going to get rid of people. They're going to try to do less. And it can be a vicious cycle. You've probably read about some of the companies that are going through this. I would point to Nike. I would point to Starbucks. All great companies, but they've hit a wall.
And could you define a little bit for the viewers a little bit more what stagflation is? I'm not sure I understand it myself.
Well, the economy stagnates, but inflation continues.
Okay.
So you don't get growth, but you get increased costs of everything.
So profits go down.
On the consumer side, they have less to spend. On the business side, it costs you more and more to pay your employees and to get the goods and supplies that you need to make or manufacture whatever your products are. And it's a vicious cycle because it just keeps going and going.
Tom, let's say that a young and a vibrant new CEO approaches you and says, Tom, with your vast experience, what are the top 3 things I should focus on in my first 2 quarters? I just took reins of this company. I have 1,500 people under my belt. What are the top 2 or 3 things I need to focus on in my new role?
Well, assuming you've been with the company and you know the products and the services, you need to focus on the team that you have and whether they're aligned and going in the direction that needs to happen. If you come from the outside, you better quickly learn the products and the services, and a little bit of focus on some of the top customers goes a long way in that learning process. But still, you've got to align all of the people towards a common goal and a common direction. I can't overemphasize that. And it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of one-on-one with people. It's a people skill thing that you can't write a memo and say, get behind me. You've got to go and make it happen.
Oh, this is good. So the way that Robert and I see it is CEOs get buried in day to day, and most of them don't have time to do one-on-ones, especially with their closest executive team. So how would you either coach or how would you advise a CEO to either make time or invest in coaching? CEOs will rise and fall because of their executive team, for sure.
Well, I think you're talking about time management. I put a priority, and I would recommend to any CEO to put a priority on building your team. And you said initially, if you got that team built and people know where they're going and what we're trying to accomplish, you're going to have a lot more time for some of the other things that a CEO has to do, whether it's investor relationships or outside world things or raising money or you name it. But if you don't do those first steps, you don't have that team, you're going to get buried regardless, because you're not going to have the support that you need to accomplish what it is that needs to be accomplished.
What strategies would you recommend for building a top team? I heard it's very hard to hire the right people. You can spend a lot of time trying to hire the right person for this job or the other and wind up not having an A player, but a B or a C player. What was your experiences with that?
Well, sometimes you inherit a team, sometimes you get to pick them. But I think that alignment does not coexist outside of whether you're an A, B, or C player. If you know what road you're taking, if you know where you're going, if you buy into what the company's trying to accomplish, not everybody has to be an A player. There can be some B's and C's that if they know where they're going, what they're doing, they can do quite well. So I think the focus, again, has got to be on making sure everybody buys into whatever the vision is, whatever the mission is, and accepts the concept that we're going to get and keep customers at a profit. Everybody has to be focused on that. And I'd say the CFO to the computer guy to you name them, they all have to understand that and buy into it. And you got to take the time, Robert. You can't delegate that. You are the figurative head and that organization, and you've got to build that buy-in. Nobody else can do that for you. You can't hire somebody. You can't delegate it.
Tom, let's dive just a little bit deeper because I think this is kind of a crucial thing. This is easier said than done. Hey, everyone in the company. But what if you're a CEO of like 1,500 or 2,000 people and you do have a sales team and you do have a marketing team or even client success, and they're the only ones that are facing outward. Everyone else is looking inward. They're doing the jobs that are in the company. So how do you instill this culture if it's not there?
Let's assume that the CEO has 8 direct reports. That's where you start. And that team of 8 has got to be aligned with you. And then their job is to do the same thing and to convince the people under them the same thing. And that's how you build it through a whole organization, whether it's 2,000 people or 20,000 people. And you can point to examples where it's been done very well, and there's other examples where it misfires all over the place. And when you analyze it and study what goes wrong, is that somebody let the ball drop. They didn't carry on with making sure that the people that are part of their team, whether it's the first team on the ladder or the top team, hadn't bought in or didn't understand what the mission was. This goes for militaries. This goes for corporations. Heck, it even goes for families.
Tom, You're really giving a lot of emphasis to the importance of the CEO or enterprise leader creating alignment. What percentage of your time do you think you spent on that versus other things, making sure everybody was on the same boat, going in the same direction?
Well, I think most of my time was spent on it. And many times, though, it was indirect. It wasn't how you would define it. But for example, we would always have customers in to have meetings with them or discussions with them. That was building alignment because we'd invite people outside of the normal sales area or customer relationship area to listen in, to be part of it. And that was, they were getting the message of the importance of the customer and they were hearing the customer. Many organizations don't do that. They do not find ways to introduce their own people to what they're doing. And it doesn't have to be every day. It has to be frequent enough so that there's a reminder of what we're all about and why we're doing what we're doing.
That's great.
And I'll give you another example. Probably one of the most successful strategy that I built in sales, and this was in an insurance context, where the people who serviced the customer were underwriters, engineers, account managers, and a variety of other people. But we would invite key prospects. We were in San Francisco at the time, to our San Francisco office. We'd have an all-day meeting with the various different disciplines that they needed to interact with, or that the other way around, the customer needed to interact with. And then we'd go out, we'd have a nice dinner, and we were building a relationship. But we were building a relationship with the organization, not with one individual, which many companies do.
Tom, what do you mean by that? Most companies build a relationship with individuals and not with a company.
Many companies will have an account executive, and that will be the relationship. They don't expand that customer relationship to the CFO, to the other important people within the company. Now, I know you can't do that with every customer, but when you're talking about major customers or major prospects, that's a key step to take. And it also trains your people of what the mission is and what you're trying to accomplish. And everybody shares in that win. You bring in that whale and a big customer, and they've all been involved in it. They all have the same feeling that that salesperson did that first found that prospect.
Tom, we touched a little bit on the current state of the economy. You mentioned the word stagflation, phenomenal word. So what would be your advice to CEOs today? How to set the direction of their company, or basically how to increase sales and profits without any additional investments? So how to navigate this current economic climate?
Well, I think if you buy the concept that stagflation is where we're headed, then you know that you're going to be faced with a tough sales environment. Your sales are going to be harder to get, and you're going to level off probably in your volume and your revenue, and your expenses are going to continue to go up. So I think you have some key choices to make, and I think the easy choice is we're going to get rid of people, we're going to downsize, we're going to cut expenses. The harder one is let's explore how we're going to increase the revenue in this type of environment. What do we need to do to sell more product, to gather more customers, and to be successful in an environment that we know is going to be different than it was? And so I would say that the top CEOs will focus on not only they got to manage the expense part of it, but they got to find a way to enhance the revenue side of the equation.
Tom, you make a great point. In today's business environment, and what you referred to as stagflation or potential stagflation, many CEOs are cutting back. They're cutting people, they're cutting costs, they're not as open to growth initiatives. People we know in marketing and sales are having difficulty selling them. You proposed the idea that instead of focusing on cutting costs, you can't shrink your way to greatness, that CEOs focus on generating revenue based on the strategy that you've discussed today. We have a process called the Collab Lab. It's an accelerated solutions environment in which you bring people together from different parts of the organization around the shared purpose of coming up with more different and better ways of generating revenue. It's a process of dialogue. It's a process of brainstorming. It's a very powerful process. Companies often lack a forum for people to collaborate around anything, but I think this idea might be something pretty powerful. So I was asking you to comment.
I think that would be very helpful to a lot of people because I know in organizations I worked in, that was a natural for me. But I know there are a lot of people that do not find this a natural thing.
So for you to bring people together from different departments to talk about how we're going to generate revenue together.
Yeah, because my goal was to align everybody in a common mission of what we were going to do. But if you don't have that drive, you probably aren't doing that. And your idea or the Collab Lab sounds like a great way to facilitate accomplishing what I'm talking about.
I love what you're saying. One, because you're smiling when you say it. It comes across as very authentic, very sincere. Two, it's very simple, deceptively simple, and it's very powerful. The key messages that I got was the role of the CEO is to focus on creating customers at a profit, and two, to make sure everyone in the organization is aligned with that or the specific strategies of the organization that fall under that. And not just to make that a concept, but to actually bring people together where they interact with each other and the customers to actually make that happen. I think it's pretty powerful.
Well, they figure out how to do it collectively.
Tom, at the end of every podcast, we have one question, and then we will slowly wrap it up. And that is, if you could put a giant billboard at the busiest highway, most eyeballs looking at it, and it's a message to, let's say, a young and up-and-coming CEO, what would you put on that billboard? What kind of a message would you put on that billboard for everyone to see?
You're a salesperson. Be proud of it.
Love it. Love it.
Mario, you had a great quote from Daniel Pink that was something like that. Do you remember what it was?
Of course. Daniel Pink says, based on recent survey, 1 out of 10 people in USA say they work in sales. What the other 9 don't realize that they are in sales as well. We've come to the end of our episode with Mr. Tom Kaiser, CEO, ex-CEO of a $5 billion company, together with my partner, Robert Hargrove. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you for sticking up until the end. And we will see you next time with another CEO to share his wisdom. Thanks, and have a good day.